My Lords, I revert to the amendment of my noble friend, noble Baroness Rolfe, and thank her for this important contribution, and welcome the contributions from my various noble friends and the news from noble Lord Palmer that he would be minded to support this amendment, and even the super news from the noble Lord Davis of Brixton that he too might support some form of inquiry. I've been struggling, my lords, for some weeks now to try and think how I could persuade this House that the noble Baroness Neville Rolfe's amendment was crucial, to persuade them of the urgency and really dangerous situation that we have got ourselves into with public sector pensions, because we discussed this in committee, and the noble Lord Viscount Thurso gave a speech in which he seemed to believe that these pensions were necessary because pay was, I think the number given was 30% below that of the private sector, whereas, as I think we know, studies show that public sector workers get about 6% for the same job as a private sector worker before these generous pensions. Now, yes, a commitment was made for these pensions. So was it made to the civil servants of Greece, of Ireland, and suddenly there was no money, and suddenly those commitments were reneged on. We don't want to get to that situation, noble lords. But the fact of the matter is that although the mood of the House is always to say, look, these people are working hard, they need a good retirement, there's a wonderful security in being promised a salary increasing with inflation that's about 2/3 of what you were getting before until you die. All of that is wonderful, and we should be generous. It would be an injustice to take it away. But the fact is, my lords, this House also is a scrutiny House that looks at the finances of this country, not just at where we can give more money to people. I've listened early this afternoon to people arguing for more money to be laid out. It's always what we tend to be quite good at. But the fact of the matter is, my lords, we now know there is no money. There is no money when we can't afford to spend enough on defence. When my noble friend, the noble Lord Elliot of Mickle Fell, said we are now paying out more in benefits than we are receiving in income tax. When in area after area, my lords, there are calls for money that is not available, and the government quite rightly rejects those calls for more money to be spent. There is no more money. So let's look, can we afford these public sector pensions? Let's look, for example, at the numbers that my noble friend Baroness Neville Rolfe came up with. Totally coincidentally, we're paying about £57 billion out, and we're putting contributions of about £58 billion in. Now, I've spoken to many civil servants, public sector workers, who have harangued me and said, oh, my pensions are short, I'm paying in every year. And I say to them, well, do you know that your money is being used to pay people who have already retired? They say, no, that can't be right. And I show them the numbers, I explain to them, and they are appalled to discover that no money is being put aside to pay those pensions that they have been promised. So even the public sector workers are being fooled by this, my lords. Now, let's say we did the very minimum thing, and we took those contributions by public sector workers, and we ring-fenced them. We said, now that's yours. It's not going to be used for anything else. It's not going to be used to pay out other people's pensions. We're just going to take your contributions and ring-fence them. No other change. Immediately, my lords, there would be a £57 billion black hole in the nation's accounts, which would reflect the reality of the situation, even on a pay-as-you-go measure. Now imagine, we've heard all about, we had to endure months, even years, of the £20 billion black hole that the previous government was meant to have left for the government. Oh, it varied. It was 20, it was 40. It was a movable feast. Never was it anywhere near as high, my lords, as 57 or 8 billion pounds, which would immediately occur. What would the government do then? It's not their fault. It's not their fault. This is a long-standing problem. But what I've just explained, is the reality of the situation, which we're all carefully ignoring. Now, let's say we went even a little bit further and said, OK, we're going to stop these defined benefit pension plans right now. We'll secure your benefits as of now that we promised you, but from now on, those contributions that you put in will be given to you for a defined contribution scheme, not a defined benefit scheme, just like as has had to happen in the public sector, because that's all a proper look can really afford. In the private sector, excuse me. That's all we can afford. OK, if we did that, if we kept our promises that we made so far...
Might I ask the noble lord, what is the notional employer's contribution he's putting into his calculation?
I'm putting the same contribution in that is made by employers, but by the government right now. Right? So you carry on doing that. You carry on doing that. And you've just now got a bunch of obligations for past promises, and in future, everybody has a defined contribution scheme. But you've got the defined benefit scheme up to now. By 2060, as the noble Baroness Neville Rolfe told us, those obligations will be resulting in £130 billion of annual payments, even if we stop now. Even if we stop now. Those will, if the economy grows by a considerable amount more than it's been growing in the past few years, they will amount to 3% of GDP being paid to pensioners of the public sector. Now, if you think that £58 billion black hole is bad enough, fancy that £130 billion black hole that you have left to future generations because we failed to act, because we refused even the reasonable request of the noble Baroness to have an inquiry. And if we go beyond that, and actually keep each year on with these schemes, then that 130 billion will be dwarfed by a far larger amount, because we're paying civil servants more, we've got more civil servants, and they are living longer. And so the payments each year will rack up until at some point it'll be like Greece or Ireland. I mean, right now, my lords, the bond markets aren't at all impressed with us. Both the 10-year rate and the 30-year rate are well above those rates that you claimed were evidence that Liz Truss crashed the economy. So if she did, then goodness, you've crashed it much more. So the bond markets are saying, we've got you on watch. And if this goes on, if you keep on with the deficits that you've got, then you're going to get into considerable trouble. Now, my lords, we have the opportunity to think about this. We have the opportunity, at least, to look at it. And so I hope that noble lords will agree to this amendment. And I hope, by the way, that if there is an inquiry, it is headed by somebody who is not in receipt of such a pension. Because in the private sector, we have a rule. If you have a great employee, and they come to you and they start talking gibberish, strangely, you think, oh, it's going to be about their remuneration. Because people, when it comes to their own remuneration, find it very difficult to be realistic and logical and fair. So I hope not only will the government accept this amendment for an inquiry, but it will put somebody in charge of it who is not a captive of that public sector pensions system.